You are listening to Know You're Crazy. My name is Susan Denee. We all have crazy. What separates us is how we choose to deal with it. I'm going to be delivering engaging and actionable tools to own your crazy, treat your crazy, and turn it into your own superpower. I hope that you walk away from this show feeling the power and strength within you. And never forget to enjoy your journey because you are worth it. Hey everyone, welcome to the Know You're Crazy talk show. My name is Susan Denee, and you are listening to Emotional Recovery in the Raw. Today's topic, the power of co-regulation. Do you know anyone who, when you're in their presence, you automatically feel better? There's a sense of comfort. They seem to carry a level of calm that transmits to you. Do you know anyone who makes you laugh or fills you with joy within a moment of getting in contact with them? In all these scenarios, if you have felt that way, you have been calibrated to their energy, their chi. You have been co-regulated, per se. In today's show, I will share the power of co-regulation and the know-how and the know-how-nots of co-regulation within your relationships. This concept, or this technique, I guess I should say, came up for me a few months back. And as I was refreshing my notes recently, I came across the topic and I thought, wow, this will be a great topic to talk about on the show. As you know, I talk a lot about taking personal responsibility for our self-regulation in how we show up in relationships, whether that's personally or professionally. We are the only ones within our control that we can decide which direction the emotional room temperature is going to go. When I read about co-regulation, I thought, this is fantastic because this not only talks about what is our energy when we walk in the room, but how do we help others when their energy isn't ideal for them? So what is co-regulation? Co-regulation is when someone feeling relaxed can basically share their calm with someone experiencing intense negative emotions. It's a warm, responsive, and empathetic way to support or even coach people through hard feelings to help them regulate their nervous system. Think of your kids when they are little or hurt themselves, or any little kid if you're not a parent, and you see them fall down, scrape their knee. Hopefully, most of you might walk over there to see if they're okay. The degree to which you comfort or nurture is completely unique to you. But hopefully you're following me here on the picture I'm trying to paint of, co-regulation. Simply you walk over, you nurture them, you let them know it's okay. The person who hasn't fallen and scraped their knee, usually the adult, sometimes it might be an older child, is usually in a better space emotionally. One, they're not facing physical pain. Two, they are completely disconnected from the one who fell down and hurt themselves. They simply walk over and nurture the child. They co-regulate the child. They bring their calmness into the picture to help the child who might be crying, upset, so that they can feel better ultimately. I would say that an honest attempt at co-regulation is altruistic and truly full of empathy for another individual. How about when you have a friend who is upset, who's visibly upset, crying, maybe overwhelmed, anxious? You reach out to calm them down. This is not about fixing somebody's problem for them. This is not about becoming so enmeshed with the problem that they have going on that now you've joined them in their misery. It's not about that. It's not about changing them or fixing them. It is simply about calming them by bringing your own sense of calm into the picture. Today, I'm going to be talking about what is that like? How do we get in that space? What if we're never in that space to help others with their emotions? What if we don't want to? You get to take a look back and ask yourself, have I been the calm one in a scenario when somebody else is vividly upset? Have I been able to bring a quote unquote chi to the equation? Co-regulation builds cooperative relationships and establishes I practiced this word before the show, reciprocity between relatives. Think of like animals grooming, like you'll see the nature shows and you got the gorillas in the mist and they're grooming one another, they're calming one another. There's a certain bonding action that is taking place. And believe it or not, us humans have that same capability of co-regulating within our relationships. In a partnership, in a marriage, it can be like a make or break of how well we connect with our partners. When our partners are overwhelmed or stressed out, do we have the ability as a partnership, as a team, to understand and respect one another enough to bring the calm into that equation? A couple things that I'll be talking about later on in the show on the not to-dos will be how we avoid that, the negativity that can come in when we see a partner or somebody close to us suffering or in distress, and we disagree with the reasons why they're in that scenario, to where we cannot literally detach ourselves from it. And we are far from co-regulating in the relationship at that point. We are far from helping somebody calm down and heighten them to a new level of peace, a new level of calm. How well we can co-regulate in a relationship will be directly related to how much trust is within that relationship, how much understanding is within that relationship. Have we made it safe for the other people in our life to show when they're upset, to show when they're distressed? What do we bring to the table when we are witnessing somebody close to us who is vividly upset? Trust means that we simply share a similar view of reality. We understand when we trust one another that we each have one another's best interest in mind. When you are trustworthy of somebody else, you will reveal more about yourself. When somebody trusts you with their own stuff, with who they are, they will reveal more to you. If the relationships in your life are not revealing intimate details, not saying they need to throw it out all on the table for you, but just ask yourself, are people comfortable telling me their stuff? Do I have people coming to me and wanting to talk? Am I creating a safe disposition, a safe emotional response to people when they are simply sharing their emotional turmoil or their emotional upsettedness? Or am I creating an environment where I'm interrupting them, I'm cutting them off, and I'm doing a couple things that I'm going to be sharing with later on in the show of the what not to do in order to create a co-regulation within relationships, right? So when we trust, we will expect less of others and we will over-deliver. When somebody trusts you, they will have less expectations of how they think you should perform, and they will over-deliver and be of service to you above and beyond when they trust you. When we trust one another, we are assuming the best in the other person. So I will challenge some parents out there right now. Parenting is near and dear to my heart. I've raised 3 of my own children, and I've assisted in raising 3 others. First marriage and second marriage both came with children. Many people are in blended families today. I guess you could say, somewhat passionate about the emotional and mental state of children and figuring out how I can best show up and figure out that fine line between appropriate awareness, understanding that they may have more going on. Today, we are fulfilled with more awareness of mental health and different issues that may have been impactful to people of my generation. What was I listening to today? I was listening to today, I rarely get on social media and scroll, but there was a funny video about Gen Xers where the lady was talking about, us Gen Xers, we didn't even know what trigger words were. We just more or less bared down and got the job done. And it's really quite a humorous video because a lot of us from my generation, that was the deal. We were pre-internet and then we went into internet, we figured it out. There was no, soft pats on the back per se. Often, at least that's not the stereotypical way to look at our generation. And so sometimes when faced in raising children in today's times, those of us who didn't have that nurturing, who didn't have that attention to what might have been going on deeper levels, might judge a child for being attention deficit disorder, might judge a child for saying that they're depressed, might judge a child for talking about autistic signs of autism, or judge a child or teenagers for mentioning that so-and-so's on the spectrum. Because sometimes in our mentalities and how we were raised, we just think people are supposed to tough it up and get through it. And we don't always recognize that their behaviors are not misaligned behaviors. They are symptoms of what might be a deeper rooted problem that sometimes we just need to look at. And that's quite a tangent for me to go on today. But as I talk about the topic of trust and wanting to help others co-regulate and calm down, I'm just wondering, when we are unable to do that for somebody, children are such a good example, because in parenting and even in adulthood, I have listened to people say things and judge the school systems today. And hell, these same people either don't have kids or abandon their kids. They want to talk about how teachers, don't know what they're doing today, but they have not ever taken the time to truly invest or become intimate with what the experiences are in today's times for our children. And so children and the concept or the perspective of parenting today trudges up a lot of beliefs. And we become so passionate about our beliefs. And there's nothing worse than a belief that stops us from growing or withholds us from true empathy and compassion for another human being. A belief that is righteous, a belief that is judgmental, a belief that needs to be negatively shared on social media, a belief that wants to tear people down. There's no trust in that. And if that's the mentality that someone is carrying, the opportunity to co-regulate somebody else or to help them calm down and come into a place of safety will not exist, because there's no trust within that relationship. And there is an inability at that point to assume the best in others. It's assuming the worst in others that will stop us from being of true service to another human being. Trust is allowing us to be open-hearted and open-minded about another individual. And when you present that within your relationships, you are the calm one in the situation. You are the one that can come in and empathize and yet not need to fix somebody. Trust will establish truthfulness. If you sometimes feel that someone is being dishonest, as I've asked myself, I've also then asked myself the question, have I made it easy to come to me and talk? Or have I held disdain and judgment, maybe not even with my words, but with my energy? Trust goes a long way in establishing how fruitful or distrust, how unfruitful our relationships can appear to be. And so when we look at co-regulation and we're saying, how do we determine if this is something that we have in our relationships right now? Well, we have to, once again, look at us. So I'm going to go to break real quick. And when I come back, I'm going to be talking about different types of relationships, such as the weird trust with dysfunctional relationships that we have. I will be back shortly. Please hang in there, because I am going to continue talking about co-regulation to give you some tips and tools about how to help others in your life find the calm when they are upset. Be back. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Know You're Crazy show. My name is Susan Denee, and you are listening to Emotional Recovery in the Raw. Today, up to serve is co-regulation within our relationships. What is the power of co-regulation? Well, co-regulation is when someone is feeling relaxed. Someone who is feeling relaxed can basically share their calm with someone experiencing intense negative emotions. It's a warm, responsive, and empathetic way to support or even coach people through hard feelings to help them regulate their nervous system. In the first part of the show, I was talking simply about the power of trust when it comes to helping somebody co-regulate from a place of intense discomfort, helping them calm down, because the energy that you're bringing into the relationship is one of, I want to say separateness. It's a disconnect from their, I'm just going to use my words. It's a disconnect from their crazy. It's when you're a happy, calm, you're in a great mood, and you see somebody who's upset, and you're simply coming in to offer your energy into that equation to help them calm down. Before I went to break, I was talking and sharing about the power of trust within our relationships and how important trust is, especially when it comes to co-regulating within a relationship, a partnership, a marriage, anything like that, where you've got two people who are involved with one another on a daily basis. And we all have bad days, and one comes through the door in a bad mood, and the other one doesn't want to necessarily attach to that bad mood and make it worse, but is the one who's witnessing the other in the bad mood able to come in and help maybe lighten the mood, maybe help them calm down without trying to, quote unquote, fix them, tell them what to do, tell them how they should be feeling, asking them 20 questions. So as I go forward, I'm going to be sharing more about how do we do that? What should we be aware of? And what can we do to grow our relationships in a positive way and help people regulate to a more calm state, especially those who we love. As I was wrapping up on trust, right before I went to break, I was talking about the weird trust with a dysfunction. Let me elaborate a little bit. It's when you are familiar with my crazy and I am familiar with your crazy. There is like an understanding of the crazy that's up underneath this roof. And sometimes we don't talk about that. Have you ever been in a relationship with somebody for a long time? Or you're in a relationship in the beginning and you finally show you're crazy one day, like you just lose it, whatever that might look like for you, and you feel embarrassed and you're wondering to yourself, are they going to stick around much longer? Are they going to hate, like they just saw my crazy. They just saw me lose my, yep. And are they going to stick around long enough for that? It's a true testament, in my opinion, of vulnerability within a relationship and how we treat one another's crazy when it happens. Because look, we all have crazy. That's why I named my show that, because I wanted to take away the stigma of crazy. It's not like nobody experiences emotional rock bottoms or none of it, like someone's immune to this. That happens. How it manifests or how it is reflected back to us or whatever it looks like might be different, but we all experience it. So there's like this weird trust with our dysfunction sometimes. I know my partner's crazy and he's definitely witnessed my crazy. And so when you have that understanding about one another and it's okay. What I mean by that is I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to criticize just because my partner has a bad day. Does that mean that we tolerate behaviors that are intolerable? No, that's not what I'm talking about. It's about just common respect within a relationship and understand that sometimes somebody's going to have a bad day. And am I in this for the long term, or am I just in this to judge and cut and run? I don't know. That's for you to decide. But there's trust when we stick around and we learn how to face those bumps together. The other trick with helping somebody in a relationship calm down quicker, whether it's your kid, whether it's your partner, don't take their emotions personally. Don't take their emotions personally, especially if they're just walking into the door after work, they're in a bad mood, or they wake up in a bad mood that day. Remember that their emotions are none of your business. Often it has nothing to do with us, but depending on what our trigger points are, I will use the trigger word, how we were raised, what might tip us, what might yank us emotionally, sometimes we will wear their emotions. So the trick in that is not to take it personally. If you are separate enough from somebody's anguish, then there's two things. You won't take it personally, nor will you try to fix it for them. Often in the rooms of recovery, because we so vulnerably share, especially for a bad day or anybody in early sobriety, sometimes there's a lot of tears. One of my mentors years ago taught me something in an AA meeting. She said to me, someone was crying. I think I got up and handed him a tissue box. And she said to me, Susan, don't hand him tissues after the meeting. And I was like, why would I not hand him a tissue? And she said, don't make them stop crying. They're trying to express. They're letting something out. And as soon as you hand them a tissue, they immediately suck all that emotion back in. Just let them feel. Let them have their moment. And when they're ready, and when they decide they need to wipe their tears, they'll get up and they'll grab a Kleenex. It's one of the best things. And since then, when I see people do it, I haven't counseled anybody on that. I just witness it. But I'm aware that whenever it happens, the person who's sharing their emotion, who's vulnerable, immediately will suck it up and stop crying. And so they stop feeling. And then once again, it kind of, so when we're not held personally to somebody's emotions, or we're not judged, we just let them feel. We're not trying to fix it for them. Let them have their moment. Then you know that there is some progress and some trust and understanding, that your calmness can help somebody else really get into a better state emotionally. And the last thing I would say to be cognizant of as far as your position is the good old word discernment. I was recently asked in a couples group, what are some of the basic foundation things that make for a successful relationship? My husband and I were participating in this. And one of the words that I gave was discernment. Discerning and discernment is simply me having a heightened awareness of when it is appropriate timing to bring something up or not appropriate timing. If my partner walks in visibly upset, that might not be the time to tell them about a big bill that is due and owing, or some troubles that a kid had at school, or my car got a flat tire. It's not the time to bring more problems into the equation. Am I able to withstand and withhold my own personal issues if my partner or if my child is struggling that day? Do I have the discernment to not make it all about me when it's visibly, my partner's having a visibly hard time? Discernment will go a long way. All right, so now that I've talked a little bit about a few key things that go into co-regulation, the good, some things to be aware of, some good practices to have, and I'm going to have more of those throughout the show. I'm going to talk a little bit about what is the science behind co-regulation. Like, what is this? And so it's really quite interesting. I don't know if some of you have heard of mirroring neurons. Seeing and validating. So this goes into seeing and validating what quote unquote calmness looks like during the storm and why mirroring works. So here's the deal. In 1999, researchers in Italy discovered we have unique neurons called mirror neurons. And these neurons give us insight into what others feel, think, and intend. When we listen deeply, turn off our judgment mechanisms, and allow ourselves to connect with others, we activate the mirror neuron system. Now it's thought of as having empathy for others. When we are fearful, that power to connect becomes disconnected, and our sensitivity to others' perspectives recedes. So once we attach personally, once we make it all about us, when we visibly see somebody upset, our ability to empathize, our ability to co-regulate, to help them co-regulate, disappears. Because as soon as we make it about us, or what we're not getting, or we're afraid we're going to lose something, which is always going to be fear, right? Scared of losing something we got or not getting what we want. As soon as we make that mental shift, we absolutely lose our ability to be empathetic. So we have an initial response when we see somebody in pain because of the mirror neurons to empathize and to be there. And what we do with it after that, as soon as that initial connection is made, is ultimately going to be the game changer on whether or not you can appropriately co-regulate within your relationships. The other thing with co-regulating, there's a couple different things you can do. One of them is simply a touch, and how much a touch can help calm somebody down. The science of touch is that it activates the brain's orbital frontal cortex, which is linked to feelings of reward and compassion. A touch signals safety and trust. It soothes. The cardiovascular system's response to a gentle touch can shut off the threat switch. You know, the fight or flight. A warm touch calms the cardiovascular. It activates the vagus nerve, which is intimately involved with our ability to be compassionate. So all of that from simply touching somebody to help them co-regulate. Think about when somebody becomes upset and we simply rub their back or we pat them on the shoulder. It's a scientific proven technique that calms somebody's cardiovascular system, not only with the person who is upset, but with the person who's doing the touching. It is an act of compassion. The difference between empathy and compassion. Empathy is when I can see where you are at emotionally and I go there with you. I am on your level. You are sad. I feel you are sad. You will hear a lot of people talk about empathy. I've talked it on my show before. I've shared annoyances with people who think they're empathizing. I've shared just different things about it. But ultimately, empathy is like, I feel where you're at. Now, if I choose to be with them where they're at, let's say they're in a negative emotional state, and I choose to be in that negative emotional state with them. You know, you ever be around somebody who's like always in the dark? I mean, that's just their disposition. They seem to have a hard time pulling up. Maybe they're going through a dark phase in their life. Like, I feel sorry for anybody who had to listen to me in my AA meetings after my dad died at COVID. Oh my goodness. I must have been on and on and on about problems. I think I might have been there for a couple of years. Might just now be coming out of it. But, so sometimes somebody's like just in that space. And so when you empathize, you feel it with them, like you are there. If you want to be of service to somebody, if you want to learn how to coach, if you want to learn how to co-regulate successfully, the idea is to shift gears, to empathize, but then move into compassion. Compassion is like the doorway in which you walk through from empathy. So you empathize, and then you open the door to action. Compassion is action with empathy. Simply, compassion is, I feel you, I understand you, but now let me help you come up. Let me help you shift. This isn't fixing them. How did I get on this empathy versus compassion? Because I was talking about the simple touch on someone's back, an act of compassion, an act of, we're going to shift. Here's, whatever that's going to do for somebody, but it shifts them, and it takes the person who's witnessing from a place of empathy and sadness. Because sometimes watching our children suffer is one of the hardest ones. Watching my elderly mom have to make changes at 80 some years old, with dementia, that is tough stuff. Watching my sister grieve through different things, that's tough stuff. Watching my husband be sad over children or his own loss of family, that's tough stuff. And so we can empathize, but if we get too stuck, we are of no service to those that we love in our life. We are no service to those that we coach in our life. We are no service to those that we are mentoring if we stay stuck in empathy. The role is, can I help them co-regulate to a new level of calmness? Can I bring my okayness? Can I understand that this isn't about me? Can I understand that I'm not here to psychoanalyze them? I'm not here to tell them how to live their life differently. I'm just here to help bring some calm so that they can energetically maybe rise up a little bit. Can I get there with those in my relationship? So simply, how did I get on this tangent? Because I'm talking about the scientific results of just touch and the abilities that are the ability that touch has to calm us and calm our cardiovascular system. It literally shuts off that threat switch, the fight or flight switch, and it's intimately involved with our ability to be compassionate. two things you can do to help, right? And some science behind it. Now, let's talk about, I'm going to go back to the mirror neurons for just a second, and how mirror neurons, as much as they're going to be a reflection, imagine if you have beliefs about a personality in your life, and it's a personality that you're in contact quite a bit. Say it could be a blended family situation where you're dealing with the exes. It could be maybe one of your kids is involved with somebody that you don't agree with, but you really try to withhold your judgment. But mirror neurons kind of give us away. They kind of give away the fact that, they're conveying how we think and how we feel. Do you believe that people feel your energy when you're not in full acceptance of them? I remember a few times working with people in recovery, and, you get into the steps of the 12 steps of recovery, and one of them involves apologizing. I'm not giving away no secrets in case somebody's worried about me talking about a program in a public forum, but I'm pretty sure anybody knows this by this point, or a lot of people know. But you make an amends for your past actions that you've done. Sometimes there's a perception that I did nothing wrong because I didn't yell, I didn't scream, But the part that is missed out is I also didn't go out of my way to be polite. I didn't give an effort to be forgiving. And imagine what your energy conveys when you're in the room with somebody that you just have a lot of disdain for. Just saying, wonder what your impact is. Wonder what those mirror neurons are giving off as far as how you feel about somebody. You ever been around somebody and you're like, I'm pretty sure they don't like me. You're probably right. You probably don't. You're picking up on that, and it's vice versa. So when we think about how our judgment spoils our ability to co-regulate a relationship or to be of service, altruistic service of helping another human being literally will mean that the person who's doing the role of the service or the mentoring or even a paid coach or a paid therapist, that their energy is in a heightened level 99% of the time. And we are human. Sometimes it may not work. But for the most part, we stay in an elevated space, because that way, in this case, if we're talking about science and mirror neurons, there is a safe space to share. They're not taking it personal. They're understanding. They're being empathetic, but they're also staying fully aware and being compassionate. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a quick break. And when I come back, I'm going to talk about what are the signs that somebody needs help co-regulating, and then the details of what are the hows, the do's, and the don'ts of co-regulation. So if you're still hanging in there with me and you're wondering, am I doing this in my relationships? Am I good at doing this in my relationships? Or how am I in my relationship when somebody's having a bad day? Do I co-regulate or do I try to fix them? Well, those answers will be there waiting for you when I return from break. So be back shortly. Stick around. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Know You're Crazy talk show. My name is Susan Denee, and you are listening to Emotional Recovery in the Raw. Today's topic that I've been sharing on is the power of co-regulation, the ability to bring your calm to somebody who is visibly upset, agitated, sad, to where your calm can help elevate their mood, or at minimum, help them calm down a little bit so they feel better. The goal behind co-regulation is not to fix anybody, but simply be present with your own sense of good energy to help them shift. And throughout the show, I've been talking about different things to take into consideration in your relationships. Let's just say things to be aware of. 1, this isn't about fixing anybody. 2, how well you co-regulate within your relationships will directly be related to how much trust is in the relationship. When somebody is vulnerable with you with their emotions, how do you respond to them? How do you react to them? Trust goes a long way in relationships. It allows, when there's a good foundation of trust, it allows things like assuming the best in others. You're not critical. You're not looking for mistakes. You're accepting them exactly for who they are. I would also like to add that when it comes to trust, I believe the more trust you have within yourself, you have within others. There are very few people in my life that can really disappoint me on any significant level. Like, I'm good. I think I've done my own work to the extent on me that I appreciate the journeys that everyone can be on. And I don't feel threatened by somebody's lack of growth anymore. There were times in my life I did. I don't feel that I'm stuck in a space of judgment when somebody's behaviors are not what I prefer. When I do get into that space, I understand that there's something on my end that I need to communicate. People cannot change if I don't express to them how their actions are making me feel. It's been a long journey of recovery and learning and understanding in relationships. So I would say that I do pretty, I'd probably say I'm okay at co-regulation. Now, my husband might disagree, but I think I do okay. And the other thing is, if you're an overall confident, I'd say easygoing, maybe easygoing isn't the right word, but positive individual, then the abilities that you have to help someone co-regulate and raise their energy when they're feeling down are probably pretty good. They're probably pretty good because what we emit ultimately is how we feel about ourselves often. And if we're feeling like we're in a pretty good space ourselves and we feel confident about who we are and the integrity in which we live our lives, then we probably are having this is going to sound horrible, more better days than not. And that conveys to the relationships in our life. People will feel comfortable coming to us. And as long as we have the emotional capacity to still lift and not fix, we will be in a great position within those relationships. Before I went to break, I was mentioning that when I came back, I'd be talking about what are the signs that somebody may need help co-regulating. To help them get back to their emotional baseline after having a bad day. What are the hows in this, and what are the don'ts of co-regulation? And I've talked about the big don't, and that's we're not here to fix people. But let me back up and let's just say, what are the signs that somebody might need help with some co-regulation? Physical signs: somebody's hyperventilating, obviously upset, crying is another one. Somebody is visibly upset and crying. Agitation. Agitation can feel a little bit intimidating if you're wanting to help somebody maybe get to a calmer baseline. Witnessing agitation in somebody else, that would be one that's challenging for me, depending on who the relationship is towards me. Growing up in a household where there was a lot of anger emotion expressed from my mom, I think that, and I grew up defensive around that, very ready to, fight around that. So today, although that's probably 90% healed, if there's somebody close to me who is expressing agitation or a mood that is more anger, every now and then I can slip back into anger, justification. How dare you behave like that around me? Like that type of ugly stuff. And so today I'm aware that I understand how that feels on the inside. And the reason why I'm talking about that, because this is going to get me to another topic on co-regulation. In that situation, I am not available to help somebody else co-regulate. I literally cannot do it because I have my own intimacy with my own emotional reactions that I too am still growing from. And so I have to be able to recognize when a certain mood or a certain relationship is too much for me. And in that scenario, I get to either leave the environment because I'm of no service whatsoever. In fact, if somebody's agitated around me and I bring my own agitation to the party, nobody's regulating at that point because I'm going to be adding fuel to that fire. I have to be able to step away and recognize that. So agitation is an interesting one for me, to where I know that depending on the relationship, the closer the relationship is to me, the harder it is for me to kind of come separate in that. Distant from me is not a problem. If I am working with somebody in a professional capacity, like as a coaching client or mentoring somebody in recovery, I actually enjoy their anger. It doesn't scare me. It doesn't intimidate me. I understand it. I respect it. I get it. but it's when it's a personal, intimate relationship with me that I know that that's probably not going to be it's just not my deal. I'm still learning in that area. In that regard, if you have a relationship in your life like that, or you have something that pulls you down with them, like this ain't even empathy. This isn't even getting empathizing with them. This is like, I'm down below empathy because now I'm past empathy. I'm judging the hell out of you. If that goes on, then that is just something for you to know and be aware of. And if it's a close relationship in your life, you get to communicate that with them. And so in the partnership of co-regulation, especially within intimate partnerships, one suggestion or one tool that you could do is have a priming conversation around it. How are you supporting one another when you're having an emotional stress day? You might have a very successful pattern of helping one another during that. You may have already figured out what works for you as a couple, but if there's still infancy within your relationship where you are still learning about one another and you both kind of seem like a hot mess, or you're both taking stuff personally, and when you're taking stuff personally, if that's kind of going on, then what I would suggest is coming together as a couple and talking about a baseline of agreements. Like, when this happens, what works best for you? It's like a curiosity questionnaire in your relationship. When this happens, what would you prefer I do? What happens when you get agitated when you come through the door for work? Do you find it helpful to talk to me about it? Do you just want to be left alone to go digress, find a way to take care of that energy? Like, what do you need from me during that time? Because sometimes we can get hooked simply because we haven't asked the questions, how can I best show up for you? So just something to be aware of. Another thing, what would be another sign of somebody who might be helpful in helping them co-regulate? This one came from me just from my own personal, like, watching people around me and behaviors. Have you ever seen, and this might be you, do you ever get anxious and so you become busy doing stuff? And I'm talking kind of like a neurotic busyness, not get stuff done during the day and you're on fire and you're just knocking out No. I'm talking about like a nervous busyness, like to where you just want to walk over and go grab their hand and be like, ooh, let's breathe. Let's breathe, that type of busyness. That might be somebody who could really just use a soft touch, or, if it's somebody close to you and you're comfortable, just kind of grabbing their hand and asking to breathe for a moment to help them get centered. I know when working with women in coaching, and I work with couples also, but a lot of women, when I'm one-on-one with them, whether it's virtually or in person, I can pick up immediately if they've just been, running and gunning and going 20 miles per hour, and they're just I just help them get centered. Just get centered. 3 big deep breaths, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Let's get centered. And something magical happens on that third breath, and then they're able to calm down and regulate. All right. So the do's are: have a priming conversation with your partner if you're thinking about your intimate relationship and how you help one another co-regulate within the relationship. Have a conversation about it. What works well? What does one prefer? What does one not prefer? Like, I will tell you, when I'm highly agitated, I don't want to hug. Don't hug me right now. I can't go there with you, because for me, right, wrong, or indifferent, it's just the way it is. I don't have anything to give back. So if I fear that there's an expectation that I'm somehow supposed to be appreciative of your hug, it irritates me more. So when I'm irritated, that's something I can't do. My partner knows that about me. Okay. So we have a priming conversation with our partners or those that we're in intimate relationships with about what works and what doesn't work. Do we like to be touched? Do we not like to be touched? Do we like to be listened to? Do we just want to walk away? Do I need you to hear me? Am I able to come up and ask for what I need, which is a comforting, loving hug? How do we know? Because we can't read each other's minds. We have to be able to communicate these things. The other thing is, the do's are, what do you know about your family? If I'm working with couples in coaching, one of the exercises that I take a couple through, so here's some free feedback for you, is simply write an exercise out. What do you know about your partner? Like, what do you know? If you were to come in the room, or somebody was to ask you, write a story about your partner and how they emotionally, like, what is your view on them? How do they work? What do they do? What do you know about your partner? Just think about it. You know how they wake up in the morning for the most part. You know how they go to bed for the most part. You know how they are in the company that you keep. You probably know what they look like when they're agitated. You've probably seen them sad. You know their habits, maybe more than they know the habits. You know, some of us are real observers. You know, we are living with somebody. It's not like we have blinders on. We can't help but see people. So what do you know about your partners? It's another good exercise to do and to ask yourself, because the more you recognize and kind of bring forth the consciousness, like you observe all the time these relationships in your life, but how often do you take stock of that and really just kind of look at it and say, this is what I know about my partner. This is what they do. And I notice when they get stressed, they do this. And I notice when this happens with, you know, a child in their life or a particular boss at work, like I notice this about them. And because once we kind of just take a non-biased look as possible as it can be and say, what do we know about our partner? Then we can kind of look at ourselves and say, what is the best way I could show up, or how can I ask them of how I can be of service in that relationship? So that's just a good little exercise for you. When you kind of observe and you ask yourself, what do I know about them? Even you can do this with coworkers at work too. What do I really know about them? Because they've been showing you their patterns every day. Guarantee it. We all got patterns, behavioral patterns. We all got them. They've been showing you those patterns every day. What do you know about them? Because once you recognize what you know about them, you won't take it so personally. That's the reason for that whole big thing. Just don't take it personally. What do you know? All right, so here's the hows. How do you help somebody co-regulate? Here we go. Holding hands. Remember, this is all just, let's just say these are the green light things. You've been given permission. You know it's okay. It's a safe environment. So filter with me here. Things that'll work to help somebody co-regulate. Holding hands. Taking deep breaths. Breathe in, breathe out. Remember the impact of mirror neurons. Your presence simply will work. You take in some big deep breaths and breathe out. Watch what happens to other people around you. They will join you. Hugging. A nice, calm hug. I'm sure you've all been comforted at some point in your life with a hug. Okay. Pat on the back. Maybe a simple little rub on the back can help somebody calm down. Using a calm voice. I recently was talking to a coaching client, and she's got a couple little kids, and the daughter, who I think might be attention deficit, but anyway, the daughter was like out of character really, and they were in a public place, and they were starting to be in public places, and the little girl was really throwing tantrums, which was kind of out of her character. Might have probably a growth spurt or something she was going through emotionally, and the mom was expressing, you know, just how upsetting that could be and how embarrassing. And I simply gave the feedback and suggestion of what I have done in my past was simply to get down real low and lower the voice, nice calm voice, and address the behavior. Something about calming the voice, going opposite and being soothing and calming will help the other person calm down and be soothed. So there you go. Be compassionate, listening openly without judgment. Listening without judgment. Ask yourself, when someone's talking, am I constantly judging them, or am I being open-minded and listening? Modeling healthy coping responses. Modeling healthy coping responses. That means that calm energy, the breathing, the soft voice, just modeling calmness in the middle of their angst will help them. Once again, mirror neurons. They're going to see it. They're going to feel it. Here's some don'ts. Invalidating their emotions. This occurs when we dismiss or reject someone's feelings, and we do this in a few ways. After listening to someone's description of their emotional struggle, their rough day, here's the things that we might say that we don't want to say. And I know I'm coming to a wrap up of the show, so I'll make this quick. Well, it could be worse. It's not that bad. That phrase right there judges the other person's emotional response to their situation. It invalidates their emotions. Often, they will stop sharing when someone says this to them. Allowing someone to have their emotions without invalidating it or trying to fix it is the secret sauce here. Here's another one. Oh, everything happens for a reason. Okay, this response is invalidating because it justifies their pain, like saying, oh, you deserve that pain because the universe is just making everything happen for a reason. What if they don't believe in a God? What if they don't believe in a higher power? And here you're saying everything happens for a reason. Really? Does it really? It invalidates their emotion. Just let them have their feelings. I know how, okay, this is a big one. And then I'll wrap up with this. So I know how you feel. This is what happened to me. Okay, fine line here. Okay, because I come from the world of recovery. And so in recovery, what works really well is sharing experience, strength, and hope with the situation. But what we are very cognizant of recovery, once we've been doing it for a while, is we're not making it all about us. Because what can happen when you say, I know how you feel, this is what happened to me. Oh, I hear you. Let me tell you my experience with that. Is unfortunately that person is making it all about them, and they're shutting down the person who's shared their experience. And unfortunately, it's like they're using someone else's pain as an excuse to talk about themselves. So if you have an immediate response to talk about you when someone is sharing their experience, let me just share with you, it's kind of difficult for them to self-regulate at that point because you're kind of taking their steam away. All right, so that is going to be a wrap for today's show. Hopefully, there are some tips and clues in there that you can use to help others self-regulate, co-regulate within your relationships. Your self-regulation comes first. Your energy must be in a heightened space to feel good about you. Be aware when you are not in a position to help somebody co-regulate. Be polite enough to walk away when that happens. Ask for what you need. If you're in an intimate relationship, have good communication with one another. But ultimately, aren't we all here to raise others, help each other feel better, and be of service on a compassionate level? All right, that is all I've got for today. Have a great evening, folks. I will see you next week, and that's a wrap. You have been listening to Know You're Crazy.
Crazy.
And my name is Susan Denee. We are identifying, understanding, and treating your crazy one episode at a time. Tune in to transformationtalkradio.com. To connect with me or Growth Spurt Your Life, please visit susandenee.com. That's Susan Denee, DENEE.com.